Hello, 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 everyone. Hope everyone's having a great week. Welcome to our second episode this week. Welcome to another episode of Narad News, everyone. Let's dive right into our topic for today. So, I found this on the Wall Street Journal, showed up yesterday on my feed, and I wanted to dissect this one because we have heard this a lot come in the news in some form or the other, right? How Apple is behind in the AI race. And here is what Wall Street Journal is also saying, that Apple is way behind in AI and still making a fortune from it. Its artificial intelligence revenue, even though Siri could not, Siri has basically been the same since its inception, hardly can do anything better. Its AI revenue is basically about to go above 1 billion this year in 2026. So, how does this happen? Now, for long term users of Apple, I don't think um, this is this is a shock. The reason is that Apple has actually never had the most cutting edge technology in its devices, right? In fact, it has always been a market follower, but where its USP is, the unique selling point or the moat, is the ecosystem, right? Before the iPhone, I would think that the iPod and the MacBooks were the center of that ecosystem. More so the iPods. They were locked up devices that you could listen to music on. And if anyone if anyone watching this is old enough to remember what iPods were like, you kind of had the big clunky ones, which you could play some games. That had a click wheel. Then it graduated to what's called the iPod Touch, where I think there was some sort of an app store that time, but essentially it was just a touch screen, and you basically had iTunes loaded on it, and you could listen to your music. And of course, the only way to transfer music to it would be through iTunes. Um, and the Windows version of iTunes was the shittiest thing to have ever existed. And I'm pretty sure that was more or less by design, because it was a way for Apple to try and get people into its ecosystem, right? Then the iPod Touch basically evolved into uh, the iPhone. Basically, iPod Touch with a calling feature, and then connectivity to internet is what an iPhone was when it started off. And of course, that ushered in the revolution, and here we are in 2026. So throughout this whole time frame that I've followed Apple is very good at looking at what the market is demanding and not chase the trends. They will introduce technology, but not, they'll almost never be the first ones on. Now, if anyone thinks that the iPhone was the first touch phone device or a full touch screen, please check out things like, I think Microsoft had a Palm Pilot even in 1990s, as early as that, right? So the technology had existed, it was not perfected, and when it was at a stable stage, it was released to the customers. And then, of course, the whole pitch was, okay, instead of trying to make the screen bigger and then give a clunky keyboard, and then the device just gets bigger and bigger to the point it feels like you're carrying a rock in your pocket, you get rid of the keyboard altogether, and all that real estate is there for you to use. Otherwise, I think the closest to an iPhone was probably like a Nokia communicator. It was literally like a flip. It was like a brick, and you could flip it open. You would see a screen. It had a keyboard. It was literally a mini computer with an antenna sticking out of it. So let's go down this. I won't be able to scroll for you guys, but let me there's a graph. Actually, you know what? I'll go down. Why not? So there's a chart over here. Okay. Basically, on this chart, it says that the gross revenue of Apple from Gen AI apps um, as of 2026 was about like 350 million. And then, oh, wait, I think the units of this on this thing are wrong, but basically, Apple's commission is about 100, right? Now, what it says is Apple is on pace to surpass 1 billion in AI revenue this year. However fancy, here's the kicker, however fancy OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, XAI make their chatbots, iPhones are still a primary way to deliver them to consumers. So this is now, you have the gold rush, that's AI, and then, I guess Jensen Huang said this, right? They are the ones making the shovels, NVIDIA's. I would argue that Apple is the one giving a mechanism for that gold to actually become useful. Apple is that factory that allows the users to do something with this AI gold. Their devices is the delivery mechanism. You could almost think of it as another type of shovel. It's just another input into the whole AI story. But the message I want to try and deliver is the trend itself is giving birth, or any trend for that matter, will always give birth to many other industries around it, right? It will help other industries thrive because of it. For AI to get to where it is, it needed GPUs. So NVIDIA, all graphics cards manufacturers doing really well. Of course, now you have the smartphone companies or the smart devices companies, they'll also end up doing really well. And Apple is strategically positioned to take advantage of that simply because they already have a dominance in the smartphone world. If anyone thinks that, oh my God, iPhones are only in the US and Canada and, no one really uses them outside of North America, let me provide a little bit of a range check. Let me pull this up. Okay. So as we can see, this chart is going up to like February 2026. iPhone's share is actually increasing, Apple's share in the mobile vendor market share worldwide. Samsung's is basically staying the same, although if we consider March 2025 or I guess February 2025, it's slightly dipped, but that would more be temporary, I would say. Of course, there is brands like Xiaomi. It looks like there's of course Huawei, and then some of the usual suspects. Your Vivos and your Oppos, all the Chinese brands. They are, I guess, the maximum they reach is basically Xiaomi, which is about a 15%, right? Interestingly, look at the Google line. It's literally at the bottom. It's like 3%, 4%, right? So Google has the only other operating system that, that exists, right? You have iOS and then you have Android. But for some reason, Google's own smartphone, which basically gives you a very close to an Android out of the box experience, is not selling that many phones. Now, to be fair, Apple does not release their numbers when it comes to the number of devices sold. They stopped doing that, I think, about a decade back. But even in terms of revenue, they have about a 32% global market share, not just North America. And it's increasing. That means in whichever parts of the world you are seeing an economic boom of some sort, people are gravitating towards iPhones. the Apple ecosystem. This actually paints, it's a good thing for Apple, and it's a good lesson for all of us to learn that chasing the latest trend need not be the best course of action for a company, right? The flip side to this is, as we all know, Apple has tends to make products for a premium market. Whether the products themselves are premium or not, it can be debated till the roosters come home. But they are priced very high, and there is a little bit of an effort you need to put in to enter their ecosystem. Of course, with the MacBook Neo, Apple is trying to position itself as a more friendly company for entry level users. But again, let's get real. You want a real good Apple device, you're going to have to spend money on it. In fact, this stream, you're watching this from a M4 MacBook Pro. And man, this was the biggest purchase I had last year, right? So it goes without saying that you have to shell out some money. But once you are able to do that, you enjoy the benefits. And of course, it goes without saying that I personally always just get Apple Care Plus. I bake that into the overall cost, and that's just how I budget for my device purchase, because these devices are locked up. You don't know how to fix them when something goes wrong with them. And frankly, I would rather just have an Apple technician do something with it, because, if they can't fix it, I at least know I'll get a new one in some form or the other, right? So I always bake that into the cost, but that of course increases the overall price. So the issue here is that more and more companies may actually look at this and start pivoting themselves to, only selling in the premium market because the margins are higher, right? That would, in the worst of the doomsday scenario, will actually leave very few options for the people who cannot afford the premium products. Today, we are seeing this happening in the consumer electronics spaces. But who knows, tomorrow we may see this in the world of automotives. We may even see this in the world of, who knows, even food products, right? Only the people who can afford it can buy stuff. I'm pretty sure there are laws to address such things, but at the end of the day, a company is allowed to do business the way they want. And there's nothing stopping them to position themselves for a target audience, right? It's a double-edged sword in the sense that, yeah, if you can convince premium buyers to buy your products, your margins are, locked in. But then we have 8 billion people on this earth, and they all have a right to use some technology. They have a right to, a decent standard of living. Who will serve them? Now, the idea is, in a competitive market, someone is always willing to fill in that gap. But I don't think it would be too wrong to say that over the past few, at least since the pandemic, we have only seen a ginormous increase in the cost of living, to the point that it's actually getting very difficult for everyone to afford everything. And I believe trends such as this have a lot to do with the affordability crisis. Of course, everyone's literally been priced out of the housing market anyway. Two people get together, they can somehow amass the funds that's needed to just make a down payment, and then we hope for 30 years that there's some form of employment so that we can just keep that one small living space. In the US, things are slightly better. At least you still get your picket fence house. In Canada, that's become a dream probably 5% of the population could afford, if that, right? Let me go down to a few specifics on this article. So whenever you have an app on the App Store, the maker of the app pays 30% of subscription fees roughly in the first year and 15% thereafter. Rates can vary by country. Gen AI apps paid Apple $900 million in App Store fees in 2025, according to the analysis firm AppMagic, right? Now, for something like, yeah, so it looks like ChatGPT contributes to about 75% of this Gen AI revenue. Interestingly, Grok is at about 5%. Like Grok is the second highest, and they're sitting at about 5%. So it's interesting. Like, yeah, it could just have been a. I'm almost curious if this is a typo. 5%, 75%. I mean, what are your options? You have your Perplexity, Claude, Gemini. I mean, you have like 4 or 5 options. If your next best is at 5%, all the other ones cannot add up to 100. I think it's probably a typo. Maybe it's 15. But anyways, be that as it may, the difference between 75 and 15 is also a lot, assuming that there is a typo. If you go to 5%, that's also massive. Anyway, sales have fallen from the peak because ChatGPT downloads have declined. We know that whole story. We did a whole live on this whole Anthropic and OpenAI tussle that's going on how, to win the government's heart over. So please do go check out that live if you guys get a chance. Let me, okay, got it. Now let's do this. Apple's dominant share at the top of the smartphone market, as I showed you guys before, market affords it another luxury, time to get its own AI strategy, right? Basically, since more and more people actually want to use iPhones, the ecosystem is in a healthy condition. That's the iPhone is the centerpiece of the Apple ecosystem. And if that is doing well, means basically the whole ecosystem is thriving. MacBooks are never going to become as popular as Windows laptops or even Linux laptops these days, just because, man, they're expensive. Maybe the Mac Neo changes that, but only time will tell. Apple's AI plan runs counter to strategies of competitors that are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on chips and data centers to build frontier large language models. Whereas Apple is spending a fraction of this, and they are trying to deploy models that run natively on iPhones, which will then end up respecting users' privacy. There is another country or company in the world that is developing models of this sort. It's Sarvam AI from India, right? Recently there was a tech summit in India. We did a couple of lives to cover that over here and also on the Wasted Wanderers podcast. But basically, Sarvam AI came up with AI models that can be utilized locally on the device. And I think their niche is translating between regional languages in India. Apple is trying to do something like that they're trying to build some sort of an LLM or an SSM, or trying to deploy AI models which will run directly on the iPhone. That could be, or that is, at least according to this article, the main reason on why Apple's sort of lagging behind. We also know that, okay, there have been issues within the company and, too siloed and a lot of, you could call them agency issues. But again, when we think of agency issues, every big organization has some form of agency issues. Apple has this healthiest ecosystem in the world, as far as a bunch of consumer tech gadgets talking to each other. But hey, they're a little behind in AI. Google has the best search engine in the world. But recently, when all the, you know, LLMs were benchmarked on how well they could perform some daily tasks, Gemini was actually at the bottom of that. I mean, well, Claude was at the top, which could do about 5%. So I guess every company has these kind of issues. So I don't think they are a big cause of alarm. Be that as it may, Apple will have to figure out its AI strategy soon, because otherwise, it is possible, if other companies figure out how to run models locally on devices, people may actually start gravitating towards, let's call them Android devices, right? In fact, I believe the Pixel does have a better camera than the iPhone. Of course, same generation of models, but from what I understand, Pixel users consistently, even on benchmarks, on sort of non you know unbiased benchmarks, we see Pixel camera doing well. So you may see people gravitating towards a phone like that, because Google also has a pretty robust ecosystem. The only thing they lack is an offline operating system, which could run on desktops. I think they could just open up Chrome OS and just sort of get around that problem. But needless to say, we live in a world of options. Um, Even though a lot of our products seem to be catered to the premium market, we still have a pretty large set of options for entry level, or for the freedom lovers when it comes to technology. So Android, as we all know, is open source. So the strategy could be a winner. The fact that Apple is focusing on locally run models. As some AI researchers have suggested, access to user data and strong user privacy makes on-device AI the dominant way consumers access the technology, right? As we keep hearing more and more about AI, just hogging your data and training itself on it, privacy concerns will go up. I think it's a logical corollary. The other aspect which this article is not touching upon is what we are seeing all over, the internetscape with respect to Windows 11. The constant shoving down of, Copilot down your throat the minute you turn on the operating system. Look, AI is good, LLM is good. I use it every day. I use it, to help me do some prep work for these videos. But at the end of the day, if someone is going to keep pushing me, use it, I'm just going to be turned away from it, right? I get it. I'll use it when I need to use it. I'll use it as my work allows me to use it. But I don't want to be constantly told, use this thing. It's like this constant nagging that has earned Microsoft its nickname Microslop. To be fair, I actually have never had a retail Windows 11 experience. This is all coming from other YouTube videos primarily. I think Apple is trying to build in AI, but introduce it to users in a more subtle way, so that users don't necessarily realize that they are interacting with some sort of AI. And I think the biggest step towards that is to not have something like Copilot. Yes, there is Siri, but Siri has earned, rightly so, a reputation of just being a very shitty assistant. Sorry, Apple, but yeah, Siri has earned that reputation. And of course, it's not a hindrance for people in the Apple ecosystem anyway. So I have a feeling whatever deal that Apple will have with Google or Gemini, it will be introduced to the users in a sort of behind the scenes way. And personally, I support that way of using AI, just because especially if I'm just on my laptop for my personal usage. I don't need a constant reminder to use AI, or AI can help me here, or AI can help me there. I am okay if I open up Spotlight search and there is some sort of an AI model that interprets my search query and gives me all the results I want and gives it to me, in some sort of a nice format. I'm okay for that. But just something constantly nagging me just because there is AI. Oh, use Spotlight, use Spotlight, use Spotlight. Yeah, I'm going to get turned off from that quite soon, right? And I think most of the dedicated Apple ecosystem users almost expect Apple to make products in that way. Subtle, useful, get the job done, and don't screw up just because there's a new toy on the block. To be fair, Mac OS Tahoe, this whole look of having too many curved rectangles, it's a little annoying. But hey, it works. Like I've personally not had any issues, even with this new liquid glass or whatever this new buzzword is. So I feel this is the way Apple will end up approaching AI eventually. And of course, they will probably have models that locally execute so that privacy can be maintained. In fact, that is one of Apple's biggest moats. People just intuitively trust Apple and iCloud a lot more than any other cloud provider because they've already paid upfront so much for the device and I guess Apple Care Plus that they just expect them, one, to just work, two, to respect their privacy. Basically, what will happen is, or what this article is saying is that if Apple can roll and can be a toll road for AI providers, basically having their app store host all these LLMs like they already are, and then charge them a fee like they charge all the app makers, it'll end up looking good for them in the long term because they will not have a big capex overhang. I mean, hardly a day or hardly a half a day goes without hearing some big data center investment, right? 600 billion, 800 billion, God knows. These numbers are staggering beyond any imagination. Just data center in Texas, data center in California, data center in Arizona. Every day you hear something along those lines. Data centers in India, in fact. So let's go down. Siri is built on old technology, another important point. I think we have discussed this. It can do some basic tasks, but can't remember a conversation, which basically means in the world of AI that it does not really have a large context window. I can do a deep dive or more of a dedicated conversation on how an AI model works. So please do leave a comment if you want to see something like that. I'm happy to discuss that in detail. Oh, oops. I got rid of the wrong thing. Okay. OpenAI wants to take control of its own destiny by developing devices. We have not seen an OpenAI device yet. It acquired a hardware startup company co-founded by former top designers from Apple, including Johnny Ive, and others have left Apple to join the effort, right? So it looks like OpenAI is going to try and come up with its own device. I think, again, the problem a company with OpenAI, a company like OpenAI will face is what's your flagship device? It took Apple and maybe to some extent Microsoft, but largely Apple, 50 years to be in this dominant position. Starting from a buttoned up laptop ecosystem or desktop ecosystem, in fact, all the way down to a device that looks like this, right? So what's OpenAI's flagship device going to be? Is it going to be a pin? Is it going to be a watch? Is it going to be a chain that hangs around my neck? I don't know. A ring? The issue with all these devices is they will require you to interact with them either with basically through speaking to them. With a watch, you get a small screen, but you can hardly do anything with it, right? In fact, if there is a watch that can do, uh, I think Garmin makes the best smartwatches, but they are sort of dedicated for the athletes. So for all the big noise that is happening, that oh, the smartphone will be killed very soon, I don't think so. The reason is a smartphone is a complete device that allows you to interact with it and also gives you just enough computing capabilities that you can do, let's say 50 to 60, maybe 70% of your work on that screen. If you get rid of the screen, if I'm sitting in a train, I need to send an email. How do I do that? Do I tell my bloody ring to do it? Do I tell my Apple Watch or whatever watch to do it? Or do I hope that a pin sitting on my pocket or stuck clipped onto my collar understands what I need to do without me being able to check it? I mean, do let us know in the comments how many of you have faced AI hallucinations. Can I trust an LLM to that extent that I'll say, okay, hey, OpenAI pin, send an email to my manager saying I'm going to be 20 minutes late, I'm stuck in traffic, or that I took the wrong train or whatever. I think that's the challenge companies like OpenAI will face. What's your flagship device where you have AI, you use it, but the human is allowed to be in the loop for verification and validation? At least in the immediate term, that'll be their challenge. That's my way of looking at it. So, of course, then it points out that Google makes the other dominant smartphone operating system, Android, as I already mentioned, builds its own Pixel smartphones, which has cooler AI features than Apple phones or iPhones, and Apple cannot match those yet. But those features have not been powerful enough to persuade iPhone users to switch. And I would argue the biggest reason for that is that Google lacks a desktop operating system which can function offline. You cannot do everything on a phone. Samsung used to have, or maybe they still have, something called a DeX, where you can take your, a Note or your S26 Ultra, whatever. You can take one of their Galaxy smartphones, put it into this dock thing, and it'll just turn into a desktop operating system that could, project onto a TV or any external monitor. The fact of the matter is, I still need that dock, which is small, I can carry it, but I still need a bigger screen so that I can use it. And I think that is what hinders Google to have a perfect ecosystem. The cloud is good, Google Docs is good, Gmail, all the Google Maps, YouTube, of course, all of this is really good. It just, if I'm on an airplane, I need to watch a movie of my own, I'm either restricted to watching it on my phone, or if that flight offers Wi-Fi, I could use a Chromebook, right? So anyways, guys, I think this is all I had for today. Let me see. Yeah, I think it says that okay, for its part, OpenAI might find it as harder to take market share from the iPhone and replicate a device ecosystem than it is for Apple to deliver competent AI. Yeah, I tend to agree. Because you have a new device, you're going to have to convince people to start moving a new way of using things. There's always a cost to switching, and people tend to resist that change. And case in point is that that Rabbit OS device, that orange device that came out a couple of years back, which claimed to, do everything with AI. You could schedule your Uber ride, or you could schedule your pizza order and whatnot. Where the hell is that thing today? Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed today's talk, and do like, share, and subscribe. Do comment. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Please spread the news, and see you guys on Monday. Bye bye.